The supreme profound and sublime Dharma is difficult to encounter in a billion eons. Now I see it, hear it, receive it, and kept it. I vow to attain the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta.
好，我们讲一下那个喜友啊。今天是
Good, so let us take a look at a journey to the West.
7月
Now we have already followed the footsteps of Phuntsok Rinpoche to Rocky Mountain on July the 4th, I think. Well, a professor then wrote this article, said that I feel particularly fortunate. This is her feeling of attending Phuntsok Rinpoche's teaching. Her name is Judith Simmer-Brown. She was the department chair of the Religious Study Department at Naropa University in Colorado and author of the book Dakini's Warm Breath, The Feminine Principle in Tibetan Buddhism. She was in the audience when Yidzhin Norbu was given teachings at Rocky Mountain Dharma Center, and below is her recollection of meeting him. In the late summer of 1993, I attended a weekend retreat program with my husband, young children aged 3 and 6, and my mother-in-law at Rocky Mountain Dharma Center, and my mother-in-law at the Rocky Mountain Dharma Center at Red Feather Lakes, Colorado. Usually the programs are hosted on weekends so that the practitioners could travel to the center and then participate in a weekend program, and then they could return back to their daily life on the Monday morning. There are people who would travel to the retreat center on the Friday night and then stay for the whole weekend, and then some of them who live rather quite far, they had to leave on the Sunday evening, and then some of them, if they live rather close, then they can then depart and go to their work on Monday morning. And back then, when I heard about their situation of attending retreats and so on, I felt quite envious of their freedom, because they could travel as they could attend the different kind of retreat programs as they wish, and having a car is definitely quite free. The program's guest teacher was someone I had never heard of, because at that time Phuntsok Rinpoche was not that well known yet. So she said, except that he was rumored to be an important, unusual master fresh from eastern Tibet. When His Holiness Khenchen Jigme Phuntsok swept into the tent with his entourage, well, she saw Rinpoche in the great tent, and she said that my breath was taken away by his sheer presence. He was physically large and imposing, wearing the simple and rough robes of a monk with no brocades inside. She said that it's a rough robe. I don't think it was rough, but it definitely was not with any brocades or anything. But that was true. His face was weather-beaten and broad. I don't really think that Phuntsok Rinpoche's face was weather-beaten, but I think the Westerners tend to take Phuntsok Rinpoche's face and his presence being weather-beaten or rough or rugged. Those were those expressions by the Westerners. So his face exuding the uplifted and an open energy of enlightenment. He spoke on an elaborated shrine on the stage, and his raw, earthy directness stopped my mind. I think some great masters really have that power of stopping people's mind, and it is because of their great blessings. Without the power of blessings, even if you were to listen to someone speak for years, you won't be able to have that experience of having the mind being stopped. Nowadays, people would listen and study for 10 years and 20 years, and people would feel that, they would take that experience of listening to the Dharma from great masters and take that experience for granted. I myself studied and listened to Phuntsok Rinpoche's teachings in person for 19 years. Sometimes I do feel great sense of blessings, and sometimes I do feel a little bit of confused and so on. But there is definitely a sense of difference. Their speech, their expression, and their presence definitely upholds this insubstantial power. As a master, as a monastic, if they can uphold a true merit and those quality of enlightenment, then they would definitely exude magnetizing power, that special power. She continued to say that while I remember little of the details of Choji's teachings from the weekend, they were based on the predictions of the Kala Chakra for the coming Dark Age, the importance of propagating the teachings and the urgency to protect the integrity of the Dharma. Nowadays, there are all kinds of prophecies flying around from Brazil, from different kinds of people and different parts of the world. This Brazilian Brazilian person who made the prophecy, I've heard that there are people who said that his prophecies tend to be quite accurate, but I'm not quite sure. She continued to say that he reminded us of the wrathful compassion of Gisar, who fearlessly overcame obstacles to the Dharma. He praised our teacher, remarking on his incredible skill and foresight in bringing the precious teachings to the United States and Canada. Back at that time, a group of great teachers came to United States and Canada to the west, Trungpa Rinpoche, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, and so on. Their imprints of Dharma to the West is still valuable and extremely meaningful. But afterwards, sadly, not many who still uphold such power to propagate the Dharma. It was back in the 70s and 80s, a group of great masters who uphold the realization of enlightenment and great power to propagate the Dharma. That generation really created quite a bit of difference in the propagation of the Dharma to the West as well as in the East. They really uphold the power to change the minds of the others. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Dudjom Rinpoche, 16th Karmapa, Trungpa Rinpoche, and so on. Nyosho Khenpo, Kalu Rinpoche, Penna Rinpoche, many more, including Dudjom Rinpoche as well as his lineage disciples. Nowadays, there are still masters, but the senior masters are getting aged, and the younger generation do have some hopes in the future. Without the younger generation, then the world will become further dark. When I went to the West, I don't feel very optimistic, because the centers in the West, unlike the centers centers in Tibet that maintained its status and maintained its function for 10, 20, or 30 years. Even if they're not that prosperous, they're still like how they were 20 or 30 years ago. But the centers in large cities, sometimes they are there, sometimes they're not. It really feels quite pessimistic when it comes to the urban centers. But back then, indeed, those great masters brought Dharma to the sentient beings in the Western world and benefited beings there. It is quite incredible. The several hundred attendees, members of my large Vajrayana communities, seemed similarly taken aback by Khenchen's charismatic presence. Our root teacher, that is Trungpa Rinpoche, had passed 6 years earlier, and the community was a bit fragmented and at sea without his guidance. In any kinds of centers, if the core person departs from that center, then after 5 or 6 years, especially if there is no great heir to inherit the center or the lineage, then it would be quite pessimistic. And for the disciples as well, after 6 years of the passing of Rinpoche, you can see that various kinds of things may happen. Inharmonious voices could also appear. We can see that Phuntsok Rinpoche, when he was parting from this world, he said that if there are great teachers who wish to repay the kindness of me, then they would also protect and would also take care of my Dharma Center. In Always Present, I think I translated his teaching, Phuntsok Rinpoche's teaching, that he mentioned that if anyone holds a sense of gratitude to me, they would definitely take care and support and be there for Larungar, for the center. And there are a great numbers of masters who would stay there and who would support Larungar as well. After 6 years of the passing of their root teacher, their group has been, there is a sense of fragmentation within their group. Joshua Mulder, from yesterday's story, we also heard similar statement from him. They really needed someone who can give very direct and powerful blessings for them so that they can feel recharged again. Otherwise, without the power of a teacher, without such kind of power of blessings, then maybe the members can sit there and practice together, to chant together, but everyone is of equal status, and nobody would recognize each other's level of realization and would listen to each other at all. So it would be very difficult to maintain the center. On top of that, since it requires a great financial support to maintain the center, it's those kinds of reasons contributed to the retrogression of the members, as well as the difficulty of the center. In the West, especially if the centers do not have any financial support to find even janitors, it would be difficult for them to continue to run as a Dharma center, and some of them would then later sold. It does not only happen to the Buddhist centers, also Christianity and so on. She continues to say that through the hospitality of our root teacher, we had hosted many other great teachers during his lifetime, including the most renowned teachers of both Nyingma and Kagyu lineages. Each of these teachers had their own distinctive qualities and teachings and bestowed their specific blessings on us as the first generation Vajrayana practitioners in America. In fact, the United States doesn't have a very long history. Neither does United States have a very firm foundation and mindset, that kind of solid mindset to nurture Buddhism. As I said yesterday, so some of you who are sitting here may think that, oh, I've got ordained for 5-6 years, but our habitual tendencies are so strong that you carried from your childhood. So to work with your habitual tendencies, to have this 5 or 6 years of experiences and then try to counteract or work with your habitual tendencies, I think it is easy to fail. But if one were to grow up in a Buddhist family and to have such kind of cultural background and such a foundation, it would be easier. Over here, they started. Over here, she also stated that they are the first generation Vajrayana practitioners, and then the second and third generation, maybe it would be hard to see if there are any Buddhist families, because the modern Western youth are rather very practical, so it's hard to say. Anyhow, she also mentioned that there are a few different other masters, but I hid their names because she mentioned that each of them had different and distinct qualities and teachings. But then none of these teachers had the particular kind of bold vision and charisma Jigme Phuntsok manifested. Phuntsok Rinpoche indeed, in terms of his power of magnetizing retinues and magnetizing disciples, are quite rare. Even those masters who propagated and taught in the West, Phuntsok Rinpoche's power of magnetizing of the disciples are quite vast. In the years that followed, I learned more about Khenpo Rinpoche and began to follow the fragments of information that emerged about his remarkable role at Laronggar. Even after his death, he still has brought new vitality to many Tibetan practitioners. In fact, not just the Tibetans, to other ethnics, the Qiang, Yi, Han, Mongol, Chaosian, different kinds of practitioners of different ethnics. But we kept her writing here because she does get some information about Laronggar, because after the passing of Phuntsok Rinpoche, many people paid attention to Laronggar and they tried to see the unfolding of the condition of Laronggar. Whenever I went outside to give teachings, people from different walks of life all pay close attention to Laronggar, to the situation of Laronggar. And whenever people request me to talk about something, they usually would just ask us to talk about Laronggar. And I just said that, well, I just told you about the situation in Laronggar. And then they kept on asking me, could you tell us more about Laronggar? Well, there's really not much to talk about. I feel particularly fortunate to have been in the presence of Choji and to have received the teachings from him. Given his remarkable charismatic presence, it is no wonder that he has had such a meaningful impact on Buddhism across modern Tibet. Many people who never even met Rinpoche and who received oral transmissions from him. We also have a group of disciples who had such fortunes. Some of you, though, who haven't met him in person, but now you have the opportunity to receive the teachings of Rinpoche. And now that after 30 years of Phuntsok Rinpoche's teaching in the West and 20 years of anniversary of Parinirvana, I think this is also our special connection, our auspicious connection to him, and you should feel, all of us should feel very honored. I really wanted to talk more, but we should stop here today, okay?
好，今天讲到这里。소남 더이 담처 제바냐 톰나니 베자는 밤 지금 소련 조아 주버쇼